When you're working on a two-dimensional surface, you're investigating space in a variety of different ways. It could be that you're looking at it from a positive and negative standpoint, or you could be trying to create the illusion of depth, or tricking someone's eyes into thinking that it's a three-dimensional space, when in reality, you're on a flat surface. So what we're going to be practicing this week is the 6 different steps that you can use, or the 6 different tricks that you can use in order to create what are known as the illusions of space. So you're going to set up your sketchbook and have 6 different boxes, and it's up to you how you want to do this. They don't need to be perfect. I'm just going to outline these here really quick here. If you are a perfectionist, go ahead and use a ruler. If you don't have a ruler, you can just grab a scrap piece of paper and kind of mark it off. These are gonna be your notes. You will need to know how to use these moving forward as we continue to investigate the observational unit here. So you can see here I have a scrap piece of paper. If I make kind of a mark on where I want my line to go, then I can create a perfect square just by making sure my lines are the same exact length. Okay? So, as far as the illusions of space go, the very first one that we're going to talk about is perspective. So perspective is something that you would have had exposure to in Drawing and Painting 1, in Intro to Art. It's creating that illusion of depth through the use of a vanishing point. So you have the idea of a horizon line. Let me draw that a little darker. You have your vanishing point somewhere off on that horizon line, and it's the idea that whatever you draw, whatever form is being drawn, it's going back into space. So everything is going back to that central point. So it could be, you know, like a sidewalk, it could be a building, it could even be a tissue box. It's whatever you're drawing, that idea that the diagonals that are going back into space, as things move away from you, they're going back to a specific point in the distance, known as the vanishing point. We'll work on perspective more in the future, but I just wanted to give you some brief little examples there. So perspective is that idea of creating depth using vanishing points. The next one is the idea of color and or value. So as things go back into space, they get lighter. And this is a trick known as atmospheric perspective. So if you've ever gone outside, I can't talk right at the same time. If you've ever gone outside in the mountains, or if you've been to the city, or if you've gone on Chickee's Rock before, and you look off in the distance, you'll see that as things go farther and farther back, it actually gets lighter. So what I'd like for you to do is create an example in your sketchbook, and it can really be anything. It can be a mountain range, whatever. But the whole premise behind atmospheric perspective is that the things that are in the foreground, in the front of your piece, those are going to be the values that are your brightest, your boldest, okay? And as they start to go into the middle ground, here's your middle ground, it's going to start getting a little bit lighter. And then as you start getting into the background, the things that are farthest back into the piece, this is where your values are going to be their lightest. Okay? So your background is the stuff that's happening in the far distance. Now, the scientific reason as to why atmospheric perspective occurs is you have all those different molecules and whatnot in the air, and as things go farther and farther back, and we're talking miles, okay, the significant distance, that atmosphere starts to interfere with the objects. There's more atmosphere in between you and the objects as they get into this background area here. So it creates a much more paler look to the objects, and they also get kind of like a bluish haze to them. But all you guys need to know for right now is the idea that as things go back into distance, they get paler or lighter in value and color. So that's, you know, what would technically happen. If you're working with something on kind of like a shorter range, like if you're doing a still life on a table, you as the artist have the choice that you can force atmospheric perspective. So if you're only working with a distance of maybe 3 feet, if you really want to draw attention to that foreground, that area that's in the front, it could be that you create your images with much bolder lines. They're much cleaner, much crisper, and then the objects that start to go farther and farther back, you might draw them a lot lighter. So we've talked about that with the idea of line quality, with using width of line in order to create emphasis and draw attention. So that idea of using atmospheric perspective could be used in this case. The next one is size. So the idea of size is pretty straightforward. If you draw something that is large, and then you draw something that's smaller, it will look like it's going back into space. Regardless of what else you're doing to it, if it's the same object, the same shape of it, the same form, what have you, if you're repeating that object over and over and over again, and it is getting smaller throughout the composition, it will look as if it is going back into space. Okay, so that's the idea of size. The next one is detail. So it's that idea once again of foreground, middle ground, background. Images or objects that are going to be in your foreground, so the area that's kind of closest to you. This is where you're going to be able to see the most information. All of the details, all of the line quality is crisp, clean. You can see all the contours. This is where all of the main information is at. As you start getting into the middle ground, things are going to start to get a little fuzzier or hazier. And then if you're drawing the same object way back into the background, not only is it going to be smaller, because we talked about that previously, but you're not going to be able to see as much information. So the details are going to be a lot less crisp and fewer, rather, as far as the details go. Overlap is the fifth way that you can create an illusion of three-dimensional space on a 2D surface. And this one's super simple. So it's just the idea by simply overlapping two shapes or two forms, you're creating the illusion that this circular shape right here is in front of this kind of organic shape behind it. Okay? So as you continue to add that on, especially if you're going through the other side here, you can see how it starts to create the illusion even more so that this object right here, this shape, is behind the shape that's in front of it. Okay? Finally, we have what is known as placement. And this is one that you have to be most aware of. And I'm going to actually show you an example. Going back here to my sketchbook. Alright, so placement, let me get my camera here. Placement is the idea of looking at the base of your object. So if we look at the base of this vase and the base of this bottle, let me draw a line here to represent those bases. As the objects are going back into space, they are going to go closer and closer to the horizon line. So as you're looking at the base of this and the base of this, we can tell that this bottle is actually farther back simply by looking at the fact that the base is higher than the base of the vase. So if we look at things, here's my horizon line. Okay, as you're drawing things going back into space, they're simply going to go higher up on the picture plane or the composition. So as things go higher and higher and higher, they're going to look as though they're going farther and back into space. Now if you have things up above the horizon line, for instance clouds or the tops of buildings, then it's the opposite. So if I had, for instance, like telephone poles, okay, here you can see here's one telephone pole. Here's another telephone pole. This one up here is going to be slightly higher. This one's going to be slightly lower. And that's the idea, the placement of things going farther back towards the horizon line. They're going to get lower and lower as they get to that horizon line. Okay? So just keep in mind with placement that things that are going back into space towards that horizon line, whether it's imaginary or not, are going to either get higher if they're below the horizon line, and if they're above the horizon line, then they're going to get lower and lower. Okay? So these are your 6 illusions of space. Create an example in your sketchbook. Make sure to clearly label what they are, and if you need to add any other details about what I had talked about, then please go ahead and do that.